Hey there YouTube, my name is Alex, spelt like that, and today we're going to be discussing which is better, bass amped or bass direct in. Now before we get started, make sure that you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and make sure that those bell notifications are active so that way you get notified every single Monday when we come out with a new video. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's jump on into the video. Okay, so as I said, we're going to be discussing whether it's better to amp a bass or to run a bass through DI. And what I mean by DI means direct in, basically plugging it directly into your computer or your interface or whatever. The musical example that we're going to be using today is my song On the Run, which you can check out on all streaming platforms. Now, full disclosure, I did record the original bass as a direct in for this track way back in October of 2022, but this will kind of be a good test too to see should I have amped it in the first place. So we're going to see which sounds better today. So for the bass today, we're going to be using Old Faithful. This is the same bass guitar that I used on the original track On the Run. This is a Ventura. I'm not exactly sure what kind of bass guitar it is. When I looked up Ventura bass guitars, nothing really showed up that looked like this. So I'm not sure, I inherited it from my wife, but it's a Ventura. For the bass amp, we're going to be using the custom KXB10. Now you've probably seen this bass amp all over my previous videos. It is the only bass amp that I actually have, but I also really like the overall round sound that it gives, so it's going to be a great option for today's experiment. Now for the audio interface, as far as the direct in is going to go, I'm using the Focusrite Scarlett 18i20. This is the third generation. I do have a second generation as well, but we just won't be using that. I really like the air modes on the third generation. And then as far as miking the bass amp, we're going to be using the classic Shure SM57. Now the reason why we're using the SM57 is because I recently put out a video where I took my 3 top bass amp mics and we did a huge shootout between all 3 of them, and the community said that they preferred the SM57 sound over the Audix D6 or the Audix D4. Plus it's just a great all-around mic to use, so hey, why not, right? But enough chit chat, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into the meat and potatoes of this video, and yeah, let's see what this bass sounds like when it's amped up.
Now celebrating cause it's wasted time. Focus on the relax, but there's more to climb, yeah. And everything is gonna be just fine. It's just a matter of time.
So listening in, after putting in some EQ and putting on some compression to kind of help drive that bass sound forward, I feel like it has a good round sound. It is a little bit muddy, and I think that's probably because of the way that the amp settings are. Also the fact that we're using the SM57. If you wanted a darker tone, I would go with something more like the Audix D6. But that's not what we're using today, and that's totally fine. I do feel like you'd have to do a little bit more to make it sit better in the mix, but all in all, it's a good overall bass sound. It just needs a little bit of extra work to be put into the mix right. We're gonna play around now with me soloing the amp so that way you can hear what it sounds like by itself, and then going back and forth solo. So here we go.
But I'm just in the basement serenading, hoping someone will listen. Going, growing, never slowing, floating to the top with every lyrical I spit. The flow keeps rolling, always hot. And if the
when I hear the amp soloed, I hear good clarity, but it is still just a little bit muddy. Same deal that I had before with not soloed. But again, all around, just a great sound coming from the amp, and something that you can really use and mess around with in your mix. Alright, so that's what that sounds like. Now let's check out what it sounds like when we go direct in or DI.
Now celebrating cause it's wasted time. Focus on the relax, but there's more to climb, yeah. And everything is gonna be just fine. It's just a matter of time. Before the hustle hits a strong decline, let's build us up a future that is so divine, yeah. A vibrant hue that's flowing through my mind. It's just a matter of time.
I'm a huge fan of going direct in. I feel like the tone is really great. It still has a great bass sound. It's just all around a very good all around bass sound, especially when you EQ and compress it. I feel like there's more clarity in the transients than there is with the amp. And yeah, so I would say, the DI, in my opinion, right now, where it sits in the mix of this particular song, I think I would go DI as opposed to going amped. It just sounds better, more clear, and since the bass guitar is more of a soloistic voice in this tune, I would really want more clarity and more transients, and it doesn't sound nearly as muddy either, so that's always a good thing. So now what I'll do is I'll go into the DI solo and go back and forth and see what it sounds like just going solo or playing with the actual tune.
I've run through the dark for so long, but I keep on waiting, 'cause self-improving thoughts feel so wrong. They keep me from fading to
Alright, so the DI solo, I'm getting the exact same response. Great tone, great overall bass sound, it sounds really good. Alright, so just at face value, using this example, it seems to me that the DI wins. But let me know in the comments below what you thought. Did you think that the amped bass sounded better? Did you think that the DI sounded better, or the direct in sounded better? Let me know in the comments below, and let's start a debate. Fun. Now let's go over the benefits real quick of using a bass amp or using DI. So one of the most clear advantages for direct in is just accessibility, right? Do you have an audio interface and you don't have a bass amp just lying around somewhere? Then probably for you, your best bet is to go direct in. The other consideration too is the fact that bass amps are really, really expensive these days, especially really good ones. The one we're playing on today is pretty cheap. I think it's less than $100. It might be a little more than $100, but it's very close to that $100 price range. Most really good amps that you are looking at are going to be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So that's something to consider. Whereas, you can always get a plugin, an amp plugin, such as the Bias FX amp plugin, which I think is great, by Positive Grid, I believe. I'll go ahead and just put up their name right here, boop, and links in the bio if you want to check out that plugin. But I use that anytime I record bass or guitar, regardless of whether or not I'm recording through an actual amp or just going direct in. The advantage for the bass amp is that you get to control how you record it. You can pick what the mic is going to be. You can move around the dials. I would have listened to the take and realized, hey, there's a little too much muddiness. I think I'm going to turn down the mids just a hair and probably turn the lows down a little bit too. So yeah, you get a lot more customizability. You get more customizability when you use a bass amp as opposed to just going direct in. So there are advantages to both sides. Now, as far as the actual sound goes, this is a debate that I think is going to go on until the end of time. You're going to have the old school people who are like, no, you've got to have it through an actual amp. And then, there's going to be people who say, well, but if you just go through DI, then you can just download an amp plugin and do everything the way that you would want to do it that way, and you can shape it and this, that, and the other. Whatever is going to work best for you is the way to go. And I know that's kind of a cop-out answer. For me, personally, I prefer direct in. I prefer recording direct in, even just to get a bass idea of what the bass is going to sound like in the song. If later on I realize, I think I really would like to shape it a little bit more, then I might re-record it on a bass amp and put it into the song at that point. Now, something else that you can do, if you have access to both, if you can go DI and you can go amped, a huge recommendation that I have is to record both. Now, some people are going to think this is a little bit overkill, and that's totally fine. Again, to each their own. But for me, what I like, especially if you're trying to beef up that bass guitar sound, you want to go ahead and you want to record two different takes, one going direct in, the other one using an amp, generally a really nice amp. And then what you do is you just layer the mix. You decide how much DI you want compared to how much bass amp you want. So just to give you an idea, we're gonna do that real quick. I've already recorded both parts, so let's just, let me show you what they sound like when you pair them together and you move the levels up and down.
Now celebrating cause it's wasted time. Focus on the relax, but there's more to climb, yeah. And everything is gonna be just fine. It's just a matter of time. Before the hustle hits a strong decline, let's build us up a future that is so divine, yeah. A vibrant heat that's flowing through my mind. It's just a matter of time.
So basically all I'm doing here is I'm just moving the faders on each one up and down to try and get a good overall mix. And yeah, I mean, you get the best of both worlds when you do this. The DI is so clear, the transients are there, it picks up on those little pluck sounds and everything, but the amp has a little bit of life, has a little bit of room sound to it, so that's always nice too. And together they're in harmony, and it sounds like it fits in the song without really having to do a whole lot.
It gets me inflated, the self-improving thoughts feel so.
Soloing it out, again, you can kind of hear the clarity between the two. You can really make out what each one is doing, but then when you bring it back in, it just sounds so full. It sounds so good. So in conclusion, I prefer the DI overall, but I also like to, in cases where I feel like there needs to be a little more beefiness in the bass guitar, I will have them play direct in and amped, and then I will just mix. So that's it for our video. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Please let me know in the comments below how you felt about today's video. Do you like the idea of recording both and mixing? Do you like just going straight DI? Do you like just going straight amped? What do you personally use for your own home studio setup? Let's have a discussion about it. Yeah. Also, be sure to hit the like button, smash that subscribe button if you haven't already, and make sure that your bell notifications are turned on so that way you're notified every single Monday when we come out with one of these episodes. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all next week. Have a wonderful week this week.